Hey friends, it's CodeNerd here, and in this video I'm going to explain control flow in JavaScript. Specifically, I'm going to talk about 4 statements you need to learn, or you're going to learn in this video. And the first one being the if statement, the while statement, the switch statement, and the for statement. So there are a couple of different sort of tricky stuff in JavaScript about these statements, and I'm going to explain and of course code all of them. So let's just start off with the if statement. And if you didn't know, an if statement just allows you to check for a condition if it's true or not, if the condition evaluates the true or not, and based on that condition, if it's true or not, you run some code. You can run some code or not run some code. So let's just, for purposes of this video, I'm going to just say const, and I'm going to define a variable that's my age equal to 21, and that's basically my age. And I'm going to define another variable which will say const my age again, but this time as a string variable. And I'm going to assign it a value of again 21 because I'm not lying in my videos. I'm 21. And now if I want to check if this value is equal to this value, I'm going to use for that purpose an if statement. And you'll see why I use these, specifically these two variables, as to show you the if statement. So to use the if statement, you need to of course type in if, as I've done here, and then just use these parentheses. And in these parentheses, you just type in the condition you want to evaluate. So what I want to do is just check if my age is equal to my age as a string, and I want to run some code if this is true. And to do that, I need to add in these curly brackets, and this is basically the body of the if statement. And now if I want to run some code, I can type it here. I can type in multiple statements like this, multiple statements of code. And if this condition is true, this code will get run. So I will just type in or print out, I'll say console.log and print out something like my age is really 21. And now, and notice here I have used a double equal sign. In JavaScript there is this double equal sign I'm using here, and there's another operator that you can use it to check if something is equal to something else, which is just the triple equal signs. There's just one equal sign of a difference, and these are the two operators you can use in JavaScript to check if something is equal. And now if I just say node, or I just run my code, I get my age is really 21. So this condition, what I've done here is I've checked if my age is equal to my age as a string with this double equal sign, and I get printed out my age is really 21 because this condition evaluated to true. So basically this condition here is true. If I write this true here, this will always run, but I'll leave it as this. And basically the difference between this and this is that this sign does the difference is that this sign does not check for the data type. So this double equal sign I'm talking about, this double equal sign says, hey, I'm only interested if this the contents of this variable is the same as the contents in this variable. So this is 21. In my age I have 21, and in my age a string I also have 21. So that's why I'll evaluate this condition to true. And it doesn't check for types. This is an integer and this is a string. They are different, but because this double equal sign does not check if they're equal, it doesn't care basically, it only checks the contents, this condition evaluates to true. But that will change now if I just add in another equal sign, and basically now I'm using the triple equal signs. And the difference is, the thing with this operator is that the operator checks for data type, and if the data types of the things left to this equal sign and right to the equal signs are different, then it evaluates to false. Basically, this sign it says, hey brother, I really care about the data types of these variables, and if you, my age, have different data type than my age is as string, then I will evaluate to false. And now you'll see that in action if I clear up the console, and whoops, and my it lags. If I run my code again, now I don't get anything printed out to the console because this evaluates to false. Also, you may be wondering, well, how can I get once again false, but with what other variables, or how can I get false another time? Or these are basically what are called falsy values, and false is if I now type in here false, this condition of course it will evaluate to always false, and this code will never run. Also, if I have a variable, let's say my age is equal to undefined, if I now check my age, if I just say if my age, basically this is undefined now, as I have written here. If I run my code again, these are actually falsy values. All of these values value to false, and because my age is undefined and undefined is a falsy value, this will not get run. If I run my code, you see nothing gets run. It's the same as in this empty string, this not a number variable. If I say 0 here, also this condition will also evaluate to false, etc. If, for example, this condition is not true, and it's not true in this case because my age, we check for my age and my age is undefined, then I can do what is called else statement. And you need to write else just after these curly brackets, and I need to say else, and then I need to again make the body of the else statement with curly brackets. And now what this else does is basically this is called an if else statement, and you can type in this else a code you want to evaluate or code you want to run if this condition is false, basically. So you just say, hey, if this is not true, can you please run this code? And I'll just print out something here, something like else, so you know it's the code in the else statement. If I now run my code again, because this is not true, because it's undefined, and undefined evaluates to false basically. And now this else code will run. And if I run my code again, I get else printed out to the console. Another thing you need to know is that you can do something like, instead of else, you can say something like else if. So you can run this if this is not true, but again, you can check this again here for a condition. So you can say else if my age is equal to, let's just say, undefined, then print out this statement. So notice I check for a condition here as well. So if I clear the console, run my code again, then I get printed out this else statement. But what if I just say something like here something like code nerd, and now if I run my code, what would you think it will happen? Comment down below. Let's just see what will happen, because my age basically it's not undefined, because it is undefined and it's not code nerd, then this code will not get run. If I now run my code, I get nothing printed out. And you can change chain those else if statements. I can add in here another else if statement that checks for, let's just say, if my age is equal to, let's just say, 25, and I need to add in another body, of course. And basically these run sequentially, so if this is not true, then this gets run, and if it is true, this gets run, and this does not get run. So if this is true, this code gets run, and this code does not get run, because this is true. So let's make this to be true. If I now say here undefined, and I just call it else 1, and I have here else 2. Now if I run my code, I get else 1, and notice this didn't even run this condition, because this was true, and it stops here. Basically what I'm trying to say, basically. We're going to learn about the while statement, and what does while statement mean? Why do we use it? Well, we use the while statement because if we want to check if some condition, while some condition is true, we want to repeatedly run some code. So if I now, let's just say, have this variable n, and I'll give it a value of 5, and I want to check if, well, this value is not, let's just say, less than 0. If it's not less than 0 or less than 1, let's just say, I want to run some code, and for this purpose I use the while statement. And to use it, of course, type while, and then in these parentheses, and this is sort of same as in the if statement, in this parenthesis I just say if n, I just type in the condition. Basically I just type in if n is while the n is greater than 1. So while this n is greater than 1, I want to run some code, and I type in the code in the while body. In the while body is, I define it in these curly brackets, and basically everything that's inside these brackets is the while body, and I can type in some code here. Like I can say console.log, and I can print n is equal to, and I can print out the value of n, and because n in is this condition, if I now, let's just say, I clear the console, and now if I run my code, n is 5 currently, as I've defined here, and if I now run my code, this condition will be true because n is greater than 1, and because n is 5, and this condition will run forever. It's an endless loop, and because I don't want it to be endless loop, I will just, on every iteration, I will say n minus equal 1. So on every iteration I will subtract 1 from this n variable. And in the first iteration, as you can imagine, n will be 5 because I've defined it, I've given it a value of 5. And once it's 5, it will go inside, this code will run, and because it's true, this code will run, and n will be 4, and then n will be 3. And by the way, we get a 5 printed out because first it's 5, and then in the next iteration, because we check if 4 and now n, but updated n because we've subtracted 1 from it, if 4 is greater than 1, and it is, and then we check if 3 is equal to 1, and then we check 2 if 2 is equal to 1. Then if I subtract 1 from 2, I get 1, and now I check if 1 is greater than 1, and because it's false, we don't run this code because this condition evaluates to false. That's basically the end of our program. We go here and then the program just executes. Now if I run my code, whoops, this is not saved apparently. Now if I run my code, as you can see, I got 5, 4, 3 and 2. Friends, it's about time for you to learn the switch statement. And because I couldn't remember the definition of what a switch statement is, and it's very good, I mean greatly explained in this document I have here. A switch statement allows a program basically to evaluate an expression and attempt to match the expression's value to a case label. If a match is found, the program executes the associated statement. And a switch statement looks like this. And I'm going to type now this, I'm going to show you why and how we use switch statement. And I'm going to clear up this, and I'm going to just define a variable with this let, or I can do it with const because const is the most restrictive type, and because it is the most restrictive type, we start first of all with the most restrictive type. And if I now let's just say, should you subscribe, and this value will be of course definitely, and because I don't know how to spell definitely, also I'll just say hell yeah. And if you have a variable like this, and if I want to, let me just best shown by example, remember, if I just say switch, and we can check the documentation here, I type in expression here that evaluates to something, some value, and my expression will basically be this variable, and I will check up this variable. Basically I just type in here the body of this switch statement, which are these curly brackets like here, and I have multiple cases that check this expression or its value, and I will have a case, and this case is basically check if, hey, you, are you this, and what is that this, it's, let's just say yes. So basically this case checks, hey, if this variable is yes, I can run some code, like I can say, whoops, I can say console, I cannot type, console.log, and say yes, yes. And if it's not, if this variable is not yes, I can check for another case, which is no, and it's never no, just so you can remember. And you need to add in these dots. I'm not sure how they're called because English is not my main language, but I promise I will learn soon. And I can say again console.log, and I can just do whatever, I can print it. And there's also this default case. So if this is not true, this is not the case, remember, if this is not the case, then and if this is not the case, I will have I can define a default case with this default keyword and just run this case whenever these are not true. And I can say something like console.log, I say default. And now I would just instead of saying yes here, I will say hell yeah, so it matches if you should subscribe. If I clear the console, and now if I run my code, whoops, if I run my code, I get all of them printed out. And why is that? Shouldn't I have gotten only this one, because it says this variable is hell yeah and only this code should run? Well, that's not really the case. You need to, if you want the switch statement to stop here, you need to add in a break here. Just say break, and you don't even need to do anything. I can even put this here. Whoops, or maybe I can't. Who knows? Break. So I can't probably. So if I now say break here, what this does is says, hey, get the hell out of this block, and it just goes here. If I now clear the console, run my code again, I get, whoops, I probably should have added these. Let's just see, or let's just see here, statements, or maybe my syntax is not correct. And friends, I made a syntax error, and I needed to add in these comma and dot, whatever they're called, semicolons, I think. I need to add this and these after the break statement. And this break, as I said, just says, hey, you, compiler or interpreter, go here and just screw this switch statement, get out. And basically, because this break says get out, you don't run this and this case. And now if I run my code, I get hell yeah, you should subscribe. And the same is true with these other cases. So if I now say just no, and I want this case to run, if I now run my code, I get the no case and the default case. Why? You may wonder. If you know why, comment down below so I can get more comments. Just kidding. So if I want to stop this and not get this default case, I need to add semicolons here and add in this break here. And now if I run my code, I get only no printed out. And friends, I know you want to learn about the for in loop or the for loop in general. Sorry to keep you waiting for so long. Now I'm going to teach you about everything about the for loop in JavaScript. And for this purpose, I'm going to say const, and I'm going to let's just say make an array of whatever. Let's just make array that I will call A, and just add in these variables, or I'll just add in 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10. And there are a couple of different ways. If I want to iterate over this array, I can say something like a dot for each. And what this for each does is just takes in an array function, and I can say something like this array function has a parameter which is the element in the array. In the first iteration is 2, and then it's 4, 6, etc. And an array function, basically, if you didn't know, it's just a regular function, but instead of saying function, etc., you just type in here the parameter and the body of the function. You type in these things, and this is basically the body of the function. And now if you want to print out the element, you just say console log and E. If I clear the console and boom, run my code, I get every element printed out here. So this is basically how you, one way how you print or iterate over an array of elements. So this is how you print a function. So there's another way with what is called for in loop, for in. And with this method, what you say is, for is basically, you'll see what you see in a second. You just type in these parentheses and say var. Here we're declaring a variable, and I'll just say I, and then we need to say in, and in is a keyword, in a, and just add in this body. And by the way, a is my array. A stands for array. And now I can do console.log. I need to say I, and I need to clear the console and run my code, and I get 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So what I've done here is, I'm going to explain now. I've defined this variable I, and this variable I is basically on every iteration is the different index in this array. So this for says, hey, this variable is going to be an index in this array, and I'm going to calculate how much how the length of this array, and I'm going to, this I is going to be just the index. So, and I print out the index this way. And if I want to, of course, print out the value that this array has on that index, I need to say a and this parentheses and I. And now if I run my code, I get these values. But what if I, instead of actually now saying, let me just say I here, and let me just remind you that if I run this code, I get only the indexes. But what if I say off here instead of in? Is there a difference? If I run my code again, boom, I get the elements of the array instead of the indexes of this array. And that's basically all you need to know about the for statement. So if you learned something from this video, make sure to subscribe over there or over somewhere around here. And peace.